Coming up today, the UN Security Council is weighing a response to North Korea's back-to-back attempts to test-fire ballistic missiles. Both launches failed. North Korea is condemned for its provocations at a big regional conference in China. The Chinese leader says his country will strongly implement the UN sanctions on the North. Plus, South Korea tells Japan again that it will not remove a statue that symbolises the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, April 29th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, North Korea tried to launch not just one, but two intermediate-range Musudan ballistic missiles on Thursday, but both crashed or blew up shortly after taking flight. They marked the second and third launch failures in the space of just 2 weeks. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said it was their assessment that the launches were unsuccessful. Washington also confirmed the launches, saying the US Strategic Command systems detected and tracked the missiles during their short flights. It quoted the North American Aerospace Defense Command as determining the missiles did not pose a threat to North America. The Musudan missile is thought to have a range of 3,000 to 4,000 kilometers, putting the US territory of Guam within its reach. Experts say the launch failures have revealed that the North's missile system has some serious flaws. The failures could be a cause of significant embarrassment for Kim Jong-un ahead of a big party congress that starts this time next week. And the UN Security Council has warned North Korea to expect a strong response after its repeated attempts to test-fire those ballistic missiles. An emergency meeting was held at the request of the United States following North Korea's launches on Thursday. Earlier, the US State Department slammed the launches as a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. It said it would raise US concerns to ensure that international resolve remains firm in holding North Korea accountable for its continued provocations. The spokesperson for the UN Secretary General also denounced the launch attempts. He said the North's actions were extremely troubling and called on Pyongyang to cease further provocations and start fulfilling its international obligations. Now, before news of these missile launches emerged, President Park Geun-hye convened two meetings on North Korea on Thursday. She called for full defense readiness against Pyongyang's provocations and said there will be no future for the North if it follows through on its threats. Song Ji-sun reports.
President Park made note of the rising threats from North Korea, which is reportedly preparing for an exercise targeting a replica of South Korea's presidential office. She also reiterated that Pyongyang is capable of conducting a fifth nuclear test at any time ahead of its ruling Workers' Party Congress for next Friday. At a cabinet meeting this morning, she said the North provocations pose a serious threat to regional security.
만약 북한이 추가 핵실험을 한다면 이것은 동북아의 안보 질서를 뒤흔드는 매우 심각한 도발 행위로 결코 용납될 수 없습니다.
President Park convened a National Security Council meeting in the afternoon to reaffirm the nation's defense readiness. It's the third time she's chairing the meeting this year after the North's fourth nuclear test in January and the long-range missile launch a month later. She said the situation would be much more serious with a fifth nuclear test, as it would be an apparent challenge to the strongest sanctions ever placed on the regime by the international community.
만약 김정은 정권이 국제사회의 경고에도 불구하고 추가 핵실험을 감행할 경우에는 아마 미래는 없을 것입니다.
President Park called on the members of the National Security Council to act quickly and protect the South Korean people if Pyongyang conducts another nuclear test while she's in Iran next week. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Now it seems South Korea's efforts to put North Korea in the spotlight at a big diplomatic conference in Beijing this week was a success. Pyongyang took up a sizable portion of the event's joint declaration. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Gwon So-ah, reports.
In a declaration adopted by all of its 26 members, Conference on Interaction and Confidence-Building Measures in Asia, or CICA, strongly condemned North Korea's nuclear test earlier this year and the following string of missile launches, and reaffirmed that its weapons program must be abandoned once and for all.
I hope that CICA will play a special role in blocking advances in North Korea's nuclear weapons capabilities and in stopping North Korea from conducting another nuclear test.
South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se called on his fellow foreign ministers to show leadership in thoroughly implementing UN Security Council's Resolution 2270. Chinese President Xi Jinping, in his opening remarks to the meeting, vowed to fully implement those sanctions. He touted China's efforts to deal with North Korea's provocations and asked other nations to push forward to bring about stability in Northeast Asia.
We hope all sides will exercise restraint, do not provoke tension between each other. Instead, we should work together to bring the peninsula nuclear issue back to the path of resolution with dialogue and negotiation as soon as possible.
Following a bilateral meeting on Wednesday with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, Minister Yoon met on Thursday with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to discuss the North Korean issue.
During the talks, China and Russia expressed serious concern about North Korea's unpredictability and the development of its nuclear and missile capabilities.
Minister Yoon extended his conversations on the matter with many other counterparts, including the top diplomats from Turkey, Thailand, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, reflecting South Korea's wish to have everyone's consensus on pressuring North Korea. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, the South Korean government has announced an extra day off for most of the nation's workers. Next week, it means families will be able to enjoy a relaxing 4-day weekend. The move is just one part of efforts to revitalize the sluggish domestic economy. Lee Ji-won reports.
President Park Geun-hye and our administration are actively seeking ways to boost the sluggish domestic economy. On Thursday, the government designated May 6th as a temporary holiday, handing Koreans a 4-day weekend that starts on May 5th, which is Children's Day in Korea.
징검다리 연휴인 5월 6일을 임시 공휴일로 지정하는 등 국민 사기를 진작하고 관광과 내수 활성화에 크게 기여하는 계기를 이번에 꼭 마련하기를 바랍니다.
The long weekend is expected to give the public more time and opportunities to consume as well as travel and spend in related activities. President Park also made remarks regarding golf as a means to boost domestic consumption. In a recent meeting with chief editors of major media outlets, the president said she hopes negative connotations on the sport change, especially after a comment she made in 2013 in which she questioned government officials on having time to play golf was interpreted as a ban from playing it. The president added that clarifying such misinterpretation should help lift the burden on the nation's golf industry. The government's planned large-scale economic measures are also expected to improve the current economic situation. Just this week, the government announced a set of measures to support job creation for young people and women, including a monthly employment day event to connect job seekers and employers, as well as plans to improve government support for investments in new industries. The government is also expected to announce on Friday whether additional duty-free stores will be allowed in central Seoul. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
A statue symbolizing Japan's wartime sex slavery victims continues to be a source of friction between Seoul and Tokyo. Japan claims its removal was part of a landmark deal meant to settle the issue, but Korea says the statue is going nowhere. Kwon Jang-ho reports.
Korea's foreign minister once again spelled out that the removal of the statue symbolizing the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul was not part of the deal that was reached last December between the two countries.
The details of the December 28th agreement is what was announced by both nations' foreign ministers on that day, no more, no less. It is not open to anyone's subjective interpretation.
This was the response to a statement made by Japan's Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Koichi Hagiuda on Wednesday, who said removing the statue was part of the deal. He claimed that the deal was to settle the issue once and for all, and that included the removal of the statue. But the Korean government has repeatedly stated that the statue has nothing to do with either government, as it was installed by private organizations. Meanwhile, in the US, the San Francisco Board of Education passed a resolution that supports the teaching of Japan's wartime sexual slavery in California high schools. The proposed curriculum for grade 10 world history described the issue as an example of institutionalized sexual slavery and one of the largest cases of human trafficking in the 20th century. A final decision to include the topic is set to be made in May after assessing further public opinion. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Now, more than 2 weeks have passed since the general election, but Korea's two leading political parties are still pondering who to select as their new floor leaders for the 20th National Assembly. The minor opposition party has already made its mind up, choosing a political heavyweight for its post. Ji Myung-gil reports.
The ruling Saenuri Party, still reeling from its crushing defeat in the general election earlier this month, is being cautious about who it selects as its new floor leader. The party lost its parliamentary majority in the election, an outcome that observers read as an expression of frustration with continued factional infighting. Ahead of the floor leader election, which is scheduled for May 3rd, the party is hoping to avoid more of the same.
We can't afford another factional struggle. It should be decided either through voting or some kind of agreement.
There are 4 contenders hoping to take the job. However, one is loyal to President Park Geun-hye, while the other 3 are from the non-pro-Pak faction, possibly making a factional fight difficult to avoid. Over at the main opposition Minju Party, at least 5 lawmakers are vying for the floor leader post, with the vote set for next month.
The contenders will hold a debate on May 4th at 10 a.m. and the vote will be held at 2 p.m.
The party is likely to elect a veteran lawmaker to lead it into legislative negotiations when the new National Assembly is seated on May 30th. Both parties are hoping to match the depth of experience in the floor leader selected by the minor opposition People's Party. The party announced Wednesday it had appointed a veteran politician Park Ji-won to the post. Park is a former member of the Minju Party and a confidant of the late President Kim Dae-jung, and this will be his 3rd time serving as the floor leader of a political party. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, in international news, the United States says Russia has an urgent responsibility to put pressure on the Syrian government to stop attacking civilians and abide by a partial ceasefire. US Secretary of State John Kerry was speaking after an airstrike on a hospital in a rebel-held part of Aleppo, which killed doctors and children. The United Nations has described the situation as catastrophic. The attack on the hospital killed at least 27 people, while more than 30 died in other attacks launched by Assad's forces. The UN's envoy for Syria says the cessation of hostilities agreed between rebels and government forces in late February is now hanging by a thread. Well, those are stories we've been following on this Friday morning here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. We also have a smartphone application. All you need to do to find that is to search for Arirang TV in your app store. Have a great day, and if we don't see you, have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.